Plato's Allegory of the Cave describes 3 levels of consciousness found in a society. Plato developed this idea to explain why his mentor Socrates was sentenced to death. His crime? Corrupting the youths of Greece. You see, back in his day, Socrates would constantly question people to find out the real reason people believe what they did. And what he would always find was that people had no good reason for believing as they did. They just went along with what everyone else believed. He inspired the youth to seek the truth, and they killed him for it. The only true wisdom is knowing that you know nothing. Three levels of consciousness. Let's go. What he's saying with this idea of the allegory of the cave is that the masses were manipulated by people behind the scenes in order to believe in something that ultimately got his mentor killed. So in this idea, imagine there are people born chained to a wall, and imagine that they only see the shadows of objects on this wall. So a shadow of a vase, a shadow of a plant. And these shadows aren't even from the things themselves. They're from cutouts representing the shape of that thing. And imagine that there's a fire that is casting light on these objects, and that light is casting the shadow onto the wall that the people that are chained to the opposite wall are seeing. There are cloaked people who are holding up these cutouts, projecting what people see. This is known as level 1, first stage of consciousness, the socialized mind. These people behind the wall who are projecting these images are cloaked, hooded. You don't know who they are, but they're controlling what people see. They're controlling what people think. They're controlling what people believe. Level 1, the socialized mind, represents everything we're taught is true as we're young and we're brought up in this world about history, race, religion, gender, nationality, any label you can think of that is really just here and made up to divide us and keep us divided against who we really should be uniting against. It's a way to blind us and keep us from seeing the truth about the nature of reality. And so we made all these labels to divide ourselves into us versus them thinking, us versus them mentality, whereas really we should be uniting against a bigger enemy, but we'll get to that later. And so as we get older, we start to question these things. Some of us have never questioned these things. Most people are sheep and they just follow whatever they're told is true. Believe everything they say on CNN, believe everything they say on the news, believe everything they read on social media, believe every TikTok they watch. Most people don't or can't really think for themselves. They'll rather let influencers think for them. And then when you talk of Gen Z and Gen Alpha and even younger, these generations are raised on the internet, constantly being stimulated with content, constantly being force-fed what to believe. And I know media has evolved over time. Before it was newspaper, constantly reading the newspaper, constantly listening to the radio, being fed that. And now it's so much more potent though. It's so much more in your face, so much more readily available at our fingertips. It's a completely different struggle. It's a completely different matrix that we're plugged into. And speaking of the matrix, this idea, Plato's Allegory of the Cave, inspired the entire idea of the film. Oh wait, before I even get to the matrix, let's bring it back to the graphic, the image. And so think of level 1 as being a passenger in a car. You're being driven. Some people have escaped being chained to this wall, and they have climbed up to the mouth of the cave. When they reach the mouth of the cave, they're blinded by the light. They're blinded by the sun. They've never seen the sun ever. And at this point, they have a choice. They can either go back down into the cave, or they can step out into the light and see things for what they really are. And I brought up the Matrix a minute ago. This whole idea of the allegory of the cave inspired the entire film. In the movie, Neo is propositioned with a choice of his own. Red pill, blue pill. Red pill, step out from the cave and see things for what they really are and see the reality of the world. Or take the blue pill, wake up in the Matrix and pretend everything's okay, pretend none of this ever happened. Being presented with this choice represents the second stage of consciousness, the self-authoring mind. So as you can see, these people that are at the mouth of the cave, they're shielding their eyes. They're still filtering the light. They're still filtering the truth based on what they want to believe is true. And so this choice between the red and blue pill represents the choice of accepting reality for what it really is, being willing to see reality for what it really is, or choosing to believe in what you were told was true. Imagine not ever seeing the sun and finally seeing the sun for the first time. It will hurt. And in the movie, when Neo was first brought out of the Matrix, his eyes hurt because he had never used them before. I'm sure you all remember being kids and watching movies in class, and when the teacher would turn off the lights, when the teacher would turn back on the lights, our eyes would hurt because we hadn't been adjusted to the light. Think of the arm as filtering the truth in some ways. At that point, the person is still wanting to hold on to what they believed was true back on level 1. They still want to hold on to what they thought was true from their socialized mind. But here on level 2, this is the self-authoring mind. So back to the car analogy, now you're not the one being driven, you're the driver, but you're still committed to one type of vehicle. And this brings us to level 3. What is level 3? The self-transforming mind. Sticking with the car analogy, when you have a self-transforming mind, you're able to change vehicles based on the terrain. If you reach a point in the road of your journey where it calls for a dune buggy, it calls for a motorcycle, it calls for a boat, a water jet skis, you're able to change based on what situation arises. This is not to say that you have to be blown in whichever direction the wind blows, because even though level 3 is self-transforming mind, there's still that choice of whether to change into that different type of vehicle or stay in the same vehicle and deal with those consequences. But what does changing vehicles mean in everyday life? What does changing vehicles represent? It represents being open to new information and not being attached to previously held beliefs, because those previously held beliefs can be proven wrong based on the presence of new information. So it's important that we not cling to the ideas that we previously held, because it's important that we stay open to the possibility and the evidence of being presented with new information that will challenge our previously held beliefs. And this is the only way we can grow intellectually. Because if we're closed off to new information and new ideas, we're not able to see life and grow intellectually and be able to see the world in a different light and ultimately grow deeper as we progress on this spiritual journey. So I named my channel after the 3rd level of consciousness because I wanted to inspire people to think deeper about their lives. I wanted to challenge people to expand their minds, reach a deeper understanding of self and the world. I want to bridge people's inner world with their outer world. That's my Ikigai. You can watch this video on Ikigai and finding your purpose as a man or woman. So let's embark on this spiritual journey together. You can start by watching these 3 things that will be crucial for your spiritual journey.